This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Christmas will be here before you know it, and you know what would make a great stocking stuffer for everybody in your family? Sterling Soap. From bar soap to shave soap, beard balm to lip balm, aftershaves and lotions, Sterling Soap has something for everyone on your list. Check out their seasonal soaps that will complement the scents of your home this holiday season. And they're more than just soap. They also have a full line of coffee straight from the Sterling Roastery. Find their full line of products at sterlingsoapcompany.com.
Face Off with Firefly Publishing for another drop into the fascinating world of pro hockey history with Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2. Following his bestseller, hockey historian and writer Eric Zwig opens the doors to the Pro Hockey Hall of Fame, revealing a treasure of untold tales, bizarre incidents, and captivating trivia that will leave the most devoted puckhead astounded. Just to name drop a few of the players he's included in this book are Wayne Gretzky, Jaromir Jagr, and Bobby Hull. Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2 is a must-read for pro hockey fans who crave more than just scores and statistics. Mr. Zwig invites you to uncover the true stories that have shaped the sport, ensuring that you will never look at the game of hockey the same way again. So skate on over to Amazon.com, Target, and Walmart to get your copy now.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hey, hello sports fans, and welcome to another edition of Yesterday Sports on the Sports History Network. Today's guest is Kristine Sader. Kristine is the great niece of former professional boxer Ace Hudkins, who fought professionally from 1922 to 1932. Kristine has written a book about her great uncle titled Boxing with the Nebraska Wildcat. Welcome to the show, Kristine.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So, Kristine, can you tell us how Ace got his nickname of the Wildcat of Nebraska, and tell us a little bit of what inspired you to write a book about him?
Well, his nickname actually goes back to when he started, and the way he fought was just like a wildcat.
Right.
Like we have the Raging Bull,
Right.
and then we have the Nebraska Wildcat, and he just charged in there fiercely. And they came up with that nickname for him, and it fits it with his boxing style for sure.
Yes.
I would say I was real inspired because I just love history. I love good stories. And after my dad passed, and it was his side of the family, I knew I wanted to tell this story and just share Ace's history. So that really inspired me to do it.
All right. That's tremendous. So, how many pages is the book?
Well, let's see here. It's
Yeah.
about, there's a chart in the back that includes his boxing record. So it's like 284. It's about 284.
You can hold it up so the listeners can see it. The cover. All right. There
This
it
isn't when you buy it, there's no bar across it.
is. Right. There it is. Okay. So, Ace, from what I read in the articles that you sent me, he actually started wrestling before switching to boxing?
That's correct. He was about 15, and he was really talented at many sports. He could play football, and he wrestled, and my great-grandpa encouraged him to join the YMCA. He's about 15, and the state boxing commissioner, he actually bought him the membership to the YMCA to get him started. He saw this kid, and he was pretty good. He won some championships with wrestling.
Right.
And then he transitioned over to the boxing.
Okay, so what do you think made him interested in boxing? He was doing well in wrestling, and then what sparked his interest in boxing?
I'll tell you. So somebody saw him and asked him. He said, this was Pat Boyle.
Right.
And he asked him, he said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?"
Right.
So he said, "I am grown up." This is a 15-year-old in typical Ace fashion. "And I'm going to be what I can make the most money at and get the most fun out of."
Right.
So that's a tall order. "You want to have some fun and start making money next week?" And Ace never batted an eyelash. He said, "Sure." So I think that was his encouragement to get into boxing.
Right. That's terrific. Okay, so he was born in Nebraska, and he later relocated to California. What year was it that he relocated to California?
That was 1924, and he and his brother Clyde came to California. They had $2 in their pocket when they got there and started knocking on the doors of the gyms until somebody would let him in to show what he had, because he was young at the time as well. And he had to demonstrate that he could get in there and compete with the other guys.
Right. So what was he, about 19 at that time?
Yes, he was a young guy. Yeah.
19. And so by the time he turned 19, he already had, from what I read in the article, by the time he turned 19, he already had 45 pro fights.
He had so many fights, and he started back in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Right.
Some were not pro, some were just like at the local boxing arena that they had there at the time.
Right.
And as he got more well known, he fought more and more at such a young age that he just kept winning, and people couldn't believe this kid.
Yeah.
They couldn't believe how good he was back then.
Right.
So imagine. I mean, he was never knocked out in the ring. On BoxRec, you could see his record. Never knocked out in the ring. He lost some by points, but never knocked out.
Wow, that's amazing. All those fights, and that's a lot of fights to have by the time you're only 19 years old, and he already had 45 fights. That's
Exactly.
a lot. And then, so he boxed for about 10 years professionally. Retired in 1932, right? Okay.
That's correct.
That happened to be the year my father was born. And,
Oh, wow.
and in those 10 years, he had 92 fights, 63 wins, 16 losses, and 12 draws. So the first thing I wanted to say is that 92 fights in 10 years' time, that's a tremendous amount of fights. That's like, that's almost fighting like once every month.
Exactly, and it's pretty rare. I mean, you won't see that today.
Oh,
You
no.
won't see those kind of records today.
No, that's 92 fights in only 10 years. So that's 9.2 fights a year. That's like I say, almost every month he had a fight.
Yeah.
And I thought it was unusual that he had so many draws. He had 12 draws. Do you know why that was? That's not really.
Well, yeah, I would say he was so good he couldn't get knocked out. And I think the other guys were good as well. And it finally came to decision. They just had to say, "We'll call it. We'll
Right.
just call it," because neither one would give up.
All right.
And he was too tough. He wasn't going to get knocked out. He wasn't going to go down without a big fight.
All right.
So I think that's partly why.
It was just highly competitive fights, and
Oh, yes.
you don't really see that many draws in someone's career. 12.
Not at all.
No,
Just the percentage, just the percentage is pretty incredible.
it is. And 92 fights, and he never got knocked out. That's also incredible.
Yeah, it is. That's a pretty good record. I don't know how many boxers have done that, but
Yeah, not
pretty
too many.
rare.
Not too many. So he started out as a welterweight, which is
Yes,
that's about 147 pounds, right?
exactly. And he worked his way up. As he would gain a little weight, he would
Right.
box in that weight.
Right.
And he was, again, one of the rare ones, actually, that has done that. There's a couple that I can think of that have done that, and it's pretty rare. There's like Thomas Hearns,
Right.
Sugar Ray Leonard,
Right.
Oscar De La Hoya. I mean, those are some that have fought in different weight classes.
Right.
But we can add Ace to that list because he fought in those different classes. Wow.
So
You don't hear that too often either.
no. So he started out at a welterweight, about 147 pounds. He eventually went to middleweight and then fought as a light heavyweight. And what would you say? Do you know what's the heaviest weight he ever fought at?
He actually, Mickey Walker was a heavyweight. So
Okay.
when he went against Mickey Walker, I believe at that time he might have just been into heavyweight because that was towards the end of his career. And, he might have been getting a little heavier at that time.
Right.
So I would say about at the end of his career, he was getting into heavyweight, like light heavyweight, just getting in
Right.
there.
I think at that time, now, I mean, today, of course, men are a lot bigger, so I think a lot
Yes.
of the heavyweights today probably weigh about 230, 240 pounds, some even heavier. But at that time, like even a guy like Rocky Marciano, the heavyweights weren't really that heavy. I think Rocky Marciano never even weighed 200 pounds.
Isn't that something? I think you're right. I think today they are a bit bigger. So I
Right.
think that's right.
And your great uncle, he was only about 5'8", right?
Yeah, not
Yeah.
not too tall, but imposing in his own way.
Right. So
Yeah,
not really a big, not that big of a guy, but he fought like a big guy.
yeah, fierce in the
Right.
ring.
Fierce. Okay. So, and I also read it. He was a two-time California state champion. And do you remember what weight divisions those were in?
Yeah, speaking of the different weights, one
Right.
was lightweight, one was considered heavyweight at the time.
Right.
So, there you go. He won those in both divisions.
Wow.
Wow. hmm
Yeah, that shows a lot too, to be able to win championships in different weight divisions.
Yeah,
So, like
that's right.
a lot of guys just dominate one division, but like you said, it's not that common for guys like that to be able to dominate in several different weight classes like that.
Yes, and he did it. I think he was more successful, as a lighter weight.
Right.
Um, but he got in there. He did it. He did it with the big guys too. So
Right.
kind of proud of that. Kind of cool that he
Yeah.
could do that.
He was a fierce competitor. And
hmm
then I read something else, which I never heard. I never knew this before. When he first started boxing in California, they had a state law prohibiting boxing matches for more than 4 rounds. I never heard of that before. Do you know what year they finally changed that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So I think they considered it too dangerous at
Right,
that time to have more rounds, and it was like 1925. That was changed to 10 round, and then it went up to 12 round for a no decision fight.
right.
So if it could go up to 12, and wow, that must have been something I imagine for the boxers at that time to adjust to that. And they're used to training for 4, and then it goes, to 10 if it's a decision, or it can go up to 12 rounds.
That's a big
That's a
difference.
lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a big difference to go from 4 rounds. You're training for 4 rounds, and then all of a sudden you have to train for 10 rounds, and then
Yep.
you have to train for 12 rounds.
Just in case, right? Yeah, and that was
Yes,
1925.
yes. And then I remember when I was watching a lot of boxing in the 1970s, championship bouts were 15 rounds, and uh, they eventually got that down to, I think now it's 12 rounds, even for a
Yeah.
championship fight. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's brutal. That's to imagine more than that. That's pretty tough.
Oh yeah, you have to be in very good shape.
Mm-hmm.
Saying that.
Right? So I imagine your breath, your wind, your
That's
lungs,
right.
all that. It absolutely.
Takes a lot of endurance.
Yeah.
And people, I guess some people don't really understand that because they'll say, well, uh, a round is only 3 minutes. But what you're doing in that 3 minutes, you're
Yep.
putting every ounce of energy you have into that 3 minutes.
Exactly right. That's a tough 3 minutes.
Yeah,
That's like putting all your energy into that round.
that's right.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
he must have been and kept himself in great shape as far as like his training. He must have done a lot of running, road work.
Yeah. He did do road work around Griffith Park in California. He would do road work running by the car. His
Right,
brother would drive the car and he'd run beside it and try to. He was in pretty good shape, and he would train at Madam Bay's. There was a place called Madam Bay's back in the day, and trained pretty hard. He also had fun once in a while, which I
right,
think his brother kind of disapproved of him
yeah,
not, sometimes losing focus a little bit during
right,
training, but he trained hard, I gotta say.
yeah. Well, you have to be at that level. You have to train hard. That's for sure.
That's right. The old school way, too. No
Right.
fancy equipment. It
No,
was
no.
just the bag and running and jump rope, things like that.
Yeah, they didn't have the modern equipment that they have now.
That's right.
So in 1927, he fought in New York at the Polo Grounds, and Charles Lindbergh was in attendance. So I was curious, how did Ace come to know Charles Lindbergh?
Well, back in the day, okay, this is from an article, 1927,
Right,
and it says a few years ago when Lindbergh was taking flying lessons at an aviation school in Lincoln, Nebraska. The three Hutkins brothers, Ace and the brothers, they lived just 2 blocks away from Lindbergh. So we think that is how they kind of got together, living closely in Lincoln at that time when Lindbergh was taking his flying lessons.
right,
And Ace so wanted to give this. It was a little boxing glove charm, similar like this little boxing
yep,
glove. And it said, to the ace of the air from the ace of the ring. And he
right,
really wanted to give it to him at that fight that Lindbergh attended. And this
right,
was at the height of Lindbergh's popularity.
yes,
So Ace looked forward to it, but Ace had a rough fight. Ace had a rough one, and he was still recovering in the room when they gave the little charm to Lindbergh. But by all accounts, Lindbergh, appreciated it and took it graciously that they gave that to him. But I think Ace would have liked to give it to him personally.
right. Oh, that's a great story. They only lived two blocks apart.
Yeah, look how the world is, right? It's a small world.
Yeah,
All people that touch history in different ways.
right.
That's pretty neat. Pretty neat.
That's pretty neat that Charles Lindbergh went to see your great uncle fight,
Yeah,
and that was
yeah.
in the Polo Grounds, which is
Exactly right. Yeah.
that's long gone. That's where the baseball, the New York baseball Giants played in the Polo Ground.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of those places are gone now.
Yeah. Now in 1928, Ace fought Mickey Walker. I think at this time they were middleweights,
Hmm.
and they
That sounds
fought
right.
at Comiskey Park in Chicago. He lost a split decision, and many people thought he was robbed of the decision. So, can you tell us a little about that fight?
Oh, yes, sir. This is one of the ones that people would talk about with Ace
Right.
because it was so close, so close to that title that he almost had. Well, it was the middleweight title, and there's a couple things that might have gone on to influence it. And this is, of course, this is from the people who really like Ace, so who knows? But I would say some people at the time speculated that Walker's manager, Jack Kearns, had some important connections in Chicago that
Right.
might have had some influence over the calls. that were made in the ring. Could be, could not, but those are what some people claimed at the time. People who were spectators claimed that Ace won, but the judges claimed that he didn't. So
Right.
the crowd said one thing, the judges said another. Another aspect of that fight was the rain. It was really raining,
Oh.
and so it was hard to get a foothold
Oh yeah.
and do what Ace would have normally done. So that was another thing that kind of influenced that fight. But when the call was made, people were not happy. There was a lot of boos, a lot of uproar. Not as big of a riot as what happened with Dundee. People were real mad with what happened with the Dundee fight that
Yeah.
was going to happen. But the crowd was mad after Walker. So that was kind of a disputed match that occurred that people talked about long after and debated who actually won. But then again, they did have the rematch later, and Ace lost that one. So it's kind of a question mark. Who knows? But he was so close. Ace was so
Right.
close on that one.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. The rematch was about a year. Well, going back to the controversial fight, the I think there was two judges that voted for Mickey Walker, but the referee thought that the referee had a scorecard and he thought that Ace won the fight.
There you go. Thank you for pointing that out. That's exactly right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was really close.
And it
I
seems
think it
like
depended where you sat. It
right,
depended what you saw.
but it seemed like most of the fans thought that Ace won the fight, and well,
Yep.
yeah, like you said, there could have been some shady characters involved there. That's
Yeah,
that's
at
been
that
known
time,
to
and I
happen.
think Ace knew some shady ones on his side too, but they didn't happen to be in Chicago, so
Right,
he knew some other shady ones in California.
right. So I had a rematch. That was about a year and a half later. They had the rematch, and that was in Los Angeles, and that was at Wrigley Field. And I never knew there was. I know the Wrigley Field in Chicago, of course. That's a very famous stadium, but I didn't know there was a Wrigley Field in Los Angeles.
Sure, and there was also, of course, the Olympic Stadium was where he fought many times, and that's
Right.
gone, unfortunately, in California. It's too bad a lot of these historic places
Yes.
don't exist anymore to go see.
Yeah. They knock them down. They knock all these historic stadiums down,
They
and
sure do.
I'm not really in favor of that. I agree with you that these they're very historic places, and I don't like it when they just knock them down like that.
Me too, because I like history, you know. I
Yes,
like to see somewhere like that, and if they're not there, we can't go see it. It's not same in Las Vegas. There's a lot of places that were historic, and they're gone. The places where Frank Sinatra sang, or the
yeah,
Rat Pack and them, and the places are just gone.
yeah, that's right. It's sad to see that happen.
Yeah.
So later in his career, uh, he had another title shot against the light heavyweight champ Joe Dundee. Now, correct me if I have the story wrong. Um, from what I read, Joe Dundee, refused to enter the ring after the promoter reneged on his promise to pay Dundee. I think it was the sum of $60,000 is what he promised him for the fight. And so Ace, I mean, this fight was supposed, they were all, Ace was in the ring, right? Waiting for him.
He was in the ring for 9 minutes waiting for Dundee before they called it and said Dundee's not coming. He had left, and so there was a lot of question of that as well, because if Ace had won, he would have taken the title.
Right.
So there's a couple things. So Dick Donald, yeah, couldn't come up with that 60,000 that Dundee's manager Waxman expected,
Right.
and the boxing commission stated that they knew of no other contract than the standard that Dundee was to receive 37.5% of the gate and Hutkins 12.5%.
Right.
That's what the Boxing Commission said. But according to what Waxman said in them, they were guaranteed this amount, and they didn't get it, the $60,000, and they weren't paid right on the spot the entire amount. And at the time, Waxman also wanted a different referee, and so it's kind of fishy. I don't know what to say, because Dundee, actually what's nice is that Dundee and Ace were kind of buddies after that. I have a picture of Dundee that he gave to Ace, and they were kind of friends after that. So I don't know that it was personal, but it would have been so good to give Ace that chance. He was so close again, so close. And who knows? Were they a little bit like freaked out mentally? Let's say, were they kind of hesitant to think, well, Ace could take this. He could do it. He was so close with Walker. He could do this, and who knows? Then Dundee would have lost his title. So, but that became a huge riot. People were throwing chairs. There were little fires lit around. Police, a lot of police were called, like riot police were called. And Dundee was almost ran out of town. They left real quick because people were mad that they had paid for their ticket. They wanted to see this match, and it didn't occur. Imagine waiting 9 minutes as Ace did, waiting and being ready to go, and nothing happens. Wow. So that was a tough one. That's a tough one. But talk about a riot. People were not happy.
Oh, no, I could imagine. Like you said, they paid for their ticket, and they're sitting there waiting to see a great fight, and then all of a sudden, and the reasoning, it'd be different if, the guy got injured at the last minute, but the reasoning was very questionable,
Exactly. I just feel bad. That's another case I feel kind of bad for Ace, because it's so close. Oh my goodness, to come that far and not get that final shot, So that was towards the end of his career, actually, of boxing.
Right. And that's the second time he was so close to getting the title.
Yep.
And so it sounds like either someone made a promise they couldn't fulfill, or maybe there was, they were using that as an excuse. Like you said, maybe they were afraid that he was going to lose the title, and they used that as an excuse.
Possibly, because even the commission said the standard would have been like this certain percentage of the gate. Yeah. And that, I guess it was, I don't know if they normally would pay them ahead of time before they even box or not. It sounds like they would do it after, but it's all kind of, it's a little bit, it's still a question mark, I think.
Yeah, it definitely sounds questionable, very shady.
Yeah.
So then, towards the end of his career, Ace almost fought future heavyweight champion Max Baer. And do you know why that fight didn't happen?
Imagine that. That would have been so great. Reminds me of the movie Cinderella Story, too.
Yes.
With Russell Crowe, That's
right.
Another great one. I don't know every detail about it, but I would say it happened with the timing, because Ace was getting to the end of his career, and maybe he didn't want to take a chance on that, that weight class anymore. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was intimidated this time. I'm not sure, but I think it's the timing, just the timing of the careers, that Max Baer is a little bit right at the end of Ace's career, I think.
Right.
But it would have been so cool. Would have been great.
Yeah, there could have been quite a differential in size, because I think, if I remember correctly, I was reading about Max Baer, and I think he was about 6'2", and I think he was over 200 pounds. So.
Right, and maybe Ace said, you know what, I've had enough. I don't think I want to go in there right now. I don't. That's a good question, because I wish it happened. That would have been very cool.
Yeah, and this is kind of like Max Baer was just starting to reach his prime. He wasn't champion yet, but he was just starting to reach his prime.
So good. He's one of the greats.
Yes, and from what I've also read that he was very misportrayed in that movie that you
You
mentioned.
know, that could be very well because
Yeah,
that's what happens. People get different perspectives or they want to make a more colorful story or something.
right.
And
Just
so
about
they
the
kind of
movie.
shifted a certain way. You know, what's interesting when I was trying to write the Wikipedia about Ace,
Right.
and one of the comments I got, they wouldn't accept it because they said it doesn't sound real. And I
Ah,
thought, but that is his record. That's what he did. And they thought it didn't sound real. So, you know, it just depends. It's been hard for me doing research to get all the facts myself because I didn't know him. I was too little. So
right.
I had to go by newspapers of the time and research in that way. And it all depends how people write the story.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
guess it's a little more. I guess it's a little more difficult to have proof when you're going back. Uh, you're going back 100 years.
It is. That's right. It's coming up on 100 now because we're in the 20s.
Yeah.
That's correct to think of it that way. That's right. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's a shame that they wouldn't accept. Wikipedia wouldn't accept it. But
They wouldn't believe it. They said it doesn't sound real. Uh,
but it
it's pretty
was.
factual.
It was real.
That's
And
right.
and then tell us a little about what Ace did after retiring. Um, Again, I want to make sure I have the correct information, but I thought I read that he did some work in the movies as a stuntman.
You are correct, 100%. And what's
Wow.
really fun is I'm working on a second book now from interviews that I took way back, and it's going to tell all about that. So after he retired,
Right.
they bought a restaurant near the studios in Burbank, towards Warner Brothers Studio, and it was a different studio at the time. It's called First National. And so they had this restaurant, and Ace was so popular and well known. Daryl F. Zanuck, the movie producer for the studios, he knew the brothers. He knew the Hutkins brothers and said, "Hey, why don't you guys, get into the movie business a little bit?" And they got into racing horses, which led to stunt horses for the movies. And Ace did do some stunt work himself at the beginning, and then he got more into the horses. So
Right.
they owned the original Trigger that was
Wow.
sold to Roy Rogers at the time, right when westerns were big. And so there's a lot of good stories about that. They had a stable that provided horses, stagecoaches, and stuntmen for the movies. So
Wow.
imagine he had like two lives, it seems like, two or three. He went
Yeah,
from boxing to the movies.
that is quite a switch to go from being a boxer to a stuntman in the movies.
Yeah, imagine.
And he had how many brothers did he have?
Well, he had other brothers that didn't come out to California, but the two brothers that came with him were Clyde and then Art, and then his other brother Ode came out later on. But Clyde and him were tight. Clyde was really his manager, his trainer,
Okay.
and was with him in the corner. He was in his corner literally
Oh.
during the matches. He'd be right down there.
Oh, okay. So, but he never actually did any boxing.
He didn't. Clyde did
No.
not, but he trained. So he trained him, and
Right.
he trained other
Right.
boxers. What they would call a stable back then. He would have
Right.
kind of a stable of different boxers,
Yeah.
and like trained them, managed them. Managing, he had a good gift with managing.
Okay. So he had a good knowledge of boxing,
Yes.
and he helped his
Yeah.
brother. That's a great story. Well, I wish I didn't think I was going to go by this fast. I wish I had written down some more questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Well, I'd be glad to come back anytime. There's many funny stories about Ace. He was a
Okay.
true character, as we can see, and he was almost like I can't compare him to Muhammad Ali, but he
Right.
had a fun personality like that. The braggadocio,
Right.
I'm going to get in there and I'm going to do it, look at me type of
Yeah.
thing. And sometimes that would play a little bit of mind games on the other opponents. So
Right.
he was really a true character. And even Mike Tyson said it. Mike Tyson said that Ace was the kind of boxer he liked. His manager or trainer would show him films of Ace. I mean, that says something right there as far as boxing and the power of the guy. So pretty neat. Kind of cool. I'm glad that I could tell his story. I'm humbled and proud that I could tell that story.
It's tremendous. Now you say, well, it'd probably be hard to get. You say that Mike Tyson's manager would show him films. Are any of these films like on YouTube or anything?
Yes, sir, they are. You can check them out on my YouTube page under Kristine Sader. There's some boxing, some great boxing film of Ace, shadow boxing and training, and I believe also part of the Mickey Walker match should be on there as well.
Oh my goodness! I gotta get a pen. Do you have the? What would I have to?
Okay, I will go to.
If anyone wanted to see this.
Yeah, that would be so great. I would go to Facebook first,
Right.
and then look for Kristine Sader's page. And on my page, I have some cool video that I've gotten.
Oh,
I think you guys
tremendous.
would like. Yeah. So Kristine Sader on Facebook.
Kristine
No, I'm sorry. Did I
Sader.
say Facebook? I meant YouTube.
Okay.
I think I said Facebook, but I mean YouTube. Yeah, on YouTube.
Go on YouTube and then just
Yes.
type in your name.
That's right. And you'll come up with my page there on
Okay.
YouTube, and it'll show all those cool videos.
Oh, that'd be great. I would love to see that, especially that Mickey Walker fight.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it shows part of it, so check it out. And every time I see something of Ace, I try to grab it and put it on there for people, and for me, I just enjoy seeing it as well.
All right, so that would be great for anyone that's a big boxing fan and likes the history of boxing. Just go to YouTube and type in Kristine's name, and you'll be able to see some footage of the great Ace Hudkins. And tell us again about where. Show your book and tell the listeners where they can purchase it.
Well, thank you so much. This is it. Ace Hudkins, Boxing with the Nebraska Wildcat. When you buy it, it doesn't have this bar across. This is
Right,
just for
it's
the author copy.
Right.
But you can see him looking fierce there. And it's available on Amazon.
Amazon.
So
Okay.
there you go, Amazon. Ace Hudkins, Boxing with the Nebraska Wildcat.
All right, that's tremendous. Okay. Well, thank you. I mean, you told some great stories, and I hope the listeners will look into the book by Kristine Sader, and want to thank you again for coming on the show. Learned a lot.
Thank you.
And I really look forward to looking at some of that footage.
Please do. And thank you so
Yeah.
much for having me. I
Oh, yeah.
appreciate that. I'd love to talk about Ace.
You're very welcome, and good luck with your book.
Thanks so much. Okay, I'll stay in touch. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and have a Merry Christmas.
You too. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.